The moment I staggered off the stretcher, the first thing I saw was Linda hollering at the paramedics while her BMW teetered off the curb, crumpled like her sense of shame. She blocked the emergency lane because her mimosas were losing their chill. Meanwhile, I was bleeding from a gash on my head, and she was about to get a crash course in what obstructing emergency service really means. You'd wonder, hold on, how does that even work legally? And how does she not see it? Let me back up a bit. It all kicked off on a dreary Sunday morning. Birds were chirping, my daughter was blasting K-pop through her earbuds, and I was cursing the spicy wings I devoured at 2 a.m. That should have been the low point of my day. But fate had other ideas, namely, internal bleeding and a neighborhood diva with the spatial awareness of a jellyfish. I'd had a minor surgery the week before, nothing major, just a routine thing, or so the doctor promised. It would have stayed routine if I hadn't decided to play suburban hero and haul the trash can to the curb like some warrior proving I wasn't totally useless. One step off the porch, a strange pop in my side, and bam, lights out. I hit the ground like a lawn chair folding under too much weight. My teenage daughter, bless her caffeine-wired heart, handled it like a pro. She dialed 911, unlocked the gate, and flagged down the ambulance. What she couldn't have predicted none of us could was the BMW sprawled across the emergency lane like it owned the street, which, honestly, matched its driver's VYB perfectly. Linda Blonde Bob, giant sunglasses, and a voice that had never heard of an indoor setting was snapping selfies with her brunch posse and matching floppy hats right in front of the no parking, emergency vehicle access only sign. It might as well have been written in VY Cybele ink. The ambulance roared up the hill, lights flashing, horn blaring, and screeched to a halt. The paramedics climbed out, radioed in, and approached her calmly at first. That's when Linda, mid-bite of her artisanal avocado toast, looked up and said, "I just need 10 minutes to finish brunch." "You can wait 10 minutes. I was sprawled on the gravel, half-conscious, catching this absurdity like it was a scene from a trashy reality show. My daughter tried reasoning with her. The EMTs did too. Linda brushed them off like they were pesky waitstaff. "My BMW's spotless," she snapped. "You people aren't scratching it with your gear." "Gear? What gear? The stretcher? My spine?" Minutes ticked by, crucial ones. My VY sound started to blur, but I could still hear the paramedics calling dispatch again. One of them, a tall guy with a buzz cut and no patience left, muttered something about clearance protocol. Whatever that meant, it flipped a switch. "No more mister. Nice guy." The paramedics hopped back in the ambulance. Linda yelled, "What do you think you're doing?" The engine roared and then crunch. They didn't hesitate. They rammed the back of her BMW just enough to shove it off the lane and onto the curb like a kid's toy. Metal scraped concrete, tires squealed, and Linda shrieked like they'd hit her cat. My daughter actually clapped. They loaded me up and we peeled out, lights blazing. I blacked out somewhere near the first turn. I came to in the ER, getting stitched up, with the doctor muttering about how close it had been. A few more minutes and Linda's BMW wouldn't have been the only thing needing repairs. You'd think that'd be the end of it, that she'd feel some guilt, maybe apologize, or at least realize blocking an ambulance for mimosas wasn't the power move she thought. No. The next morning, while I was still in a hospital bed, my phone pinged a neighborhood app alert. Warning. Local man fakes emergency to justify attack on my luxury car. Attached was a photo of her barely scratched BMW, and a rambling screed accusing me of staging the whole thing for attention. She claimed I threw myself on the ground to spite her for, politely, asking the ambulance to wait. Politely? She called me a fraud with a martyr complex, said I overreacted to a minor mix-up, and thanked her brunch buddies for keeping cool under pressure. I laughed at first, what else could I do? But then the HOA weighed in. Not to call her out or support me, no. They sent a vague memo urging residents not to stir trouble with board members. Board members like Linda, whose surprise was the HOA president's sister-in-law. I've seen a lot in my day. I used to work in city code enforcement before switching jobs. I've busted illegal backyard poker dens and once fined a guy for keeping a kayak in his dining room. But I've never seen anyone turn brunch into a weapon like this. I went home 3 days later, sore, stitched, and fuming. Waiting in my mailbox, an HOA violation notice for causing a neighborhood disturbance and damaging community property, aka Linda's bumper. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Linda being Linda. This was a war. The HOA was shielding her, which meant she wasn't just an entitled pest with a BM, she had backup. But here's the thing. The higher someone climbs on their HOA throne, the harder they crash. And Linda was practically begging for a nosedive. So I started digging. Nothing big at first, just flipping through HOA rules, checking city codes, making quiet calls. You'd be shocked how fast the flaws show up when you nudge a system built on mimosas and nepotism. Then I struck gold, a buried line in a 5-year-old zoning note. One little technicality that, if I played it right, could unravel everything. I grinned. Linda thought she'd won. But her curb stunt was about to flood her world literally. Brunch? It was about to be off the menu for good. 3 days after the ambulance fiasco, I was back home. Aching and pretending nearly dying in my driveway wasn't the most mortifying moment of my life. I'd hoped for some concern, maybe a hint of remorse from Linda. Instead, I got a fancy envelope from the HOA, printed on fake marble paper like it was a royal edict. It accused me of reckless use of emergency services, causing disturbance and damage to community property, Linda's BMW, now apparently sacred. They even suggested a $500 remediation donation to the HOA's discretionary fund for Linda's emotional distress. I stared at that letter, then laughed until my stitches ached. The next day, Linda strutted by in oversized sunglasses like knockoff superhero shades, sipping a mimosa from a tacky goblet. She waved with a smirk that screamed, "You thought it was over?" That afternoon, she posted on the neighborhood board again, a photo of herself fake crying by her dented BMW, captioned, "Trauma is real, but brunch should be sacred." Her brunch clique ladies named Cheryl, Brenda, and a Susan who insists it's Suzanne liked it up. The HOA president chimed in with full support during this trying time. No one checked on me. "No, glad you're alive." I was the bad guy for needing an ambulance in the way of her eggs Benedict. That's when I knew this wasn't just a rude neighbor. It was a rigged game propping up one woman's ego. The HOA wasn't just behind her, they were her shield. And I hate nothing more than unfairness dressed up in official letterhead. I used to work in municipal code enforcement, dry detail heavy stuff like zoning and safety regs. I knew how to spot rot. And this neighborhood stank of it. I got to work quietly. I dug into public records, HOA filings, minutes, budgets. Gaps everywhere, years, lost in a digital switch. Then I checked zoning maps. Bingo! The emergency lane Linda blocked wasn't optional, it was a mandated fire access route from the neighborhood's founding. The clause was clear. Must remain unobstructed at all times. Violations trigger municipal review. Funny how my violation notice skipped that part. Next, I looked at the board. Linda wasn't just the president's sister-in-law, she was community events chair. With access to the discretionary fund she wanted my $500 for. A month earlier, a $2,400 withdrawal was labeled hospitality expenses for a spring social. Guess what cost $2,400? Her dumb brunch. I kept digging. Former board members had quit abruptly over the years. I called one Mike who'd moved nearby to escape. He spilled. Linda ruled the board. Cross her and she'd fine you into oblivion or smear you online until you broke. It wasn't just arrogance, it was a system. I documented everything: posts, letters, receipts, screenshots, timestamps. I built a case like a TV lawyer. Meanwhile, Linda doubled down. She threw a healing brunch, draping her BMW in flowers like a war hero. She gave a speech about unity against false accusations. I watched from my porch, heating pad on my ribs, wondering if I'd slipped into a fever dream. She passed a petition to censure me for endangering harmony. That's when I stopped being mad and got dangerous. I'd found my leverage, a citywide emergency services audit in 2 weeks. Fire marshals, code officers, and safety reps would check every neighborhood. One slip like a brunch blocked lane could mean massive fines. If the HO was complicit, it could dissolve. I just had to wait, let Linda bury herself in mimosa-soaked denial. I'd savor every second because while she played VI-Tim, I was lining up the fire marshal's next VI-Sit. The week before the audit, Linda was a cartoon VI lane building her own trap. She plastered the neighborhood app with brunch pics and flyers for a spring brunch extravaganza, healing through mimosas. She taped them everywhere against HOA rules, naturally. She even stuck a brunch zone, parking only sign in the emergency lane, gold letters on pink. I stared from my window, double-checking I wasn't on painkiller hallucinations. Inspection day came. I took my coffee outside, watching Linda's crew set up chairs, flowers, banners, a propane heater buzzing by the table, all smack in the emergency lane. Smooth jazz drifted from a speaker like a cheap spa ad. Then the city rolled in. A red truck, a fire SUV, code enforcement. Linda waved like they were guests. They weren't amused. The fire marshal snapped photos of the blocked lane, then eyed the heater. Certified for street use? Linda blinked. It's decorative. He scribbled. Code enforcement asked for a permit. She cited verbal HOA approval from her brother-in-law. More scribbles. I sipped my coffee as they shut it down. The BMW got towed, the heater confiscated. Guests bailed. Linda stood alone, petals scattering like a sad parade. She glared my way, sensing something, but she boxed herself in. The next day, the HOA's emergency meeting was a mess. Fines topped due law $50,000. Emotion not mine, of course, suspended Linda from leadership. It passed fast. She logged in late, muted and demoted. I wasn't done. I rallied neighbor bullied, fined, silenced ones. We got signatures for a board re-election, then a vote to dissolve the HOA entirely, handing control back to the city. Passed big. Linda didn't show. 2 weeks later, her house was for sale. She left quietly, no brunch, no fuss. I planted wildflowers where her table stood. My daughter added a sign, no Linda zone. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just clearing the lane, making sure no one dies over a mimosa again. If a BMW got banged up, that's just poetic damage.